Force on Force features the largest and strongest outdoor military organization in the country. These are the men and women who make it possible to enjoy the freedom to hunt and fish. It is with great pride that we bring you Force on Force podcast, coming to you from the Force on Force Talk.
Hey, welcome to the Force on Force podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Dalrymple. We're coming to you from the Force on Force Talk. We're here in Tulsa, Oklahoma this week on the Mobile Talk, the Tactical Operations Center. We wrapped up the Bassmaster Classic in Dallas, Fort Worth, and we got one more show before I get to go home to Kentucky, and it has been a long month.
And I get to get rid of him.
Yeah, definitely. So we got Layne here and Justin Snow. It's going to be a short crew this week just because it's the end of what we got going on. But a little bit of wrap up from the Classic. I do have to, we had a lot of predictions from the Classic, and I think we all kind of underestimated the weight that would be caught in the Classic because they did break some records in the Classic.
Yes, they did. I just want to know if George won.
He did, technically.
Oh!
He won on the
The weight.
Well,
even though this guy wasn't fishing, he still won the weight.
Well, he was still 5 pounds off.
I thought he was about 72.
He was
what was
7.
the total weight?
He was 71, and Easton Fourth Gill caught 76.15, which is a record for the Bassmaster Classic. He shattered Kevin Van Dam's record, and if I'm not mistaken, that record was set, I think, in New Orleans. Is where.
Yeah, I do.
That's where it was in New Orleans. And with irony, so here's one of the ironies of that record in my relationship to ArmyBassAnglers. That's one of the first shows that I ever met anybody from ArmyBassAnglers in person at. Was that Bassmaster Classic that Kevin Van Dam set that record at. So there's always a tie-in back to the ArmyBassAnglers.
I know. That's the first time I met Shawn. He was fanboying me.
Oh, no. Definitely wasn't happening. Definitely was not. So, the Bassmaster Classic, first time I have a experience with ArmyBassAnglers outside Cody Prather talking to me. Was it 2010? Was that Classic? I think it was. Sometime around that time.
I can't remember.
Something like that, yeah.
I go to them every year, so it's
Yeah.
hard to remember.
Yeah, 2010, sometime around there. But it is what it is. A lot of good stuff. But we are in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we'd be remiss if we didn't say this segment of the podcast is brought to you by our friends at Lowrance, since we are in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is their headquarters here. So great partnership with Lowrance Electronics, and we love seeing those guys and what they do for us. So we love being in Tulsa and what they do for the organization. And they've been my longest personal sponsor since 2010 time frame. So a lot of good stuff there. So a lot of great things. But yes, I don't think anybody guessed the weight correctly, technically, because yes, George was the closest one to it. But yes, George was not even fishing the Classics.
Right. I mean, a little fun fact, though, if we're talking about history and weights and all that, and KVDs and Roland Martins, did you know that there has not ever been a female ever in the Bassmaster Classic yet?
Yes.
That is not a true statement.
Really?
No.
No, huh?
That is not a true statement. So, you actually have two. They're in the Bassmaster Classic. Kim, was it Bain? She was married to what's his name from Reaction Innovations. That's when they had the women's tour and they qualified for the day. And then Pam Martin Wells, who actually is very sick right now, was the second female to fish the Bassmaster Classic. So there are two that have fished the Bassmaster Classic. So yes, we have had two. Justin's checking me right now, but
I was wondering, is it on the women's side or?
Let's see here. I just pulled it up a second ago. Let me see if I can find it again.
There's two women that have fished the Bassmaster Classic.
And it was actually a question off of Google.
Yeah.
I clicked on the little Now I gotta find it.
Yeah, see, Google is not always right.
That is true.
So
That is
yeah.
very true.
What, Sean's true?
Yes, Sean's was true. Easton Fothergill broke that record in this classic with the 7615.
Yeah, and but yes, Pam Martin Wells is one of the females that's why when you said that, we were having a discussion actually about her.
Yeah, because they're raising all that money to help her.
Yeah, so she is actually in the Lake Fork area, and so we see her off and on a lot just out there.
Oh, it says right here, and this is from Google. It says in the it just says in a bass tournament with, however, that growth has materialized at a much slower rate. A female angler has yet to reach the top level of bass competition and has not been. Oh, nope. Stand corrected. Shawn is correct. 13 years since Pam Martin Wells.
Wow, who was the first?
Whoa,
There's one before her, and I think I want to say Kim Baines was. I can't remember. She used to be, if you know your bass fishing history, so Kim was like a co-host on.
I've heard of her before.
And so she's married to I can't think of his name, that created the Reaction Innovation, the Sweet Beaver. Yeah, that's her husband. And
and the Skinny Dipper too, right?
Yeah, all that stuff. That's all that stuff. But that's how that. And so they had it was like 2 or 3 years. They had the women's tour, and there was an automatic qualify. The winner, the champion of the women's tour, got to go fish the Bassmaster Classic, and she was the first. And I can't remember. That may have been I don't think that was the New Orleans event, but yeah, that happened. And then Pam Martin Wells was the second. I don't think they did away with it after that and just said you had to go fish the opens after that. That's where it kind of came from.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of the history on that. As you heard on the last podcast, I've been attending Bassmaster Classic since I've probably been about 10 or 12 years old. So I've not contended them straight because, there was time in my military career, but yeah, I'm a steward of the history of bass fishing from the days. And I can tell you particularly like history of bass fishing, remember particular deals. Like, so Randy Blunkett, what is he known for adamantly right now for? He's opposed to like the forward facing sonar deal, right?
Yeah, I do remember reading and watching a little article video that he did. He's not one of my particular followers that I follow, my news feeds through Facebook
But so he does all these videos and everything else. But do you know like if you know your bass fishing history, do you know like what the tournament that he became famous on for winning and how he won it?
No.
Okay. Buggs Island, some people call it Buggs Island or Kerr Lake, depending on what side or North Carolina, Virginia you're on. And when I tell you this story, you'll remember as soon as I tell you this, he pulled the plug on his Ranger boat to get it farther enough down in the water to sink it to get it underneath the bridge.
I remember that now.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that kind of goes along with, was it Steve Kennedy, that did it in Dardanelle before they sealed off the old highway bridge?
No, it wasn't Steve Kennedy. He didn't. It was, that's Menendez that did that.
Martin Menendez, yes.
But what's his name? Yeah, I know him. He and I fished college together. He's from Oklahoma who did it on MLF last year. He did that, but he actually had to physically get out of his boat, and I can't remember if he pulled the plug or whatever. And anyways, there was a whole he got disqualified, requalified or whatever. But that wasn't the first time it ever happened. So when I say there's a history behind like when you've been a steward of like bass fishing history and you I grew up around it and you kind of know some of these cool stories of hearing back in the day, like there's such thing as called the Roland Martin rule. There is. So there's like a rule where you can't like
You're not that young.
you're not allowed to like. They can't have any. Like redfish. You have like the platform. You go up there when they're bed fishing. Well, but there's this such thing. You can't have a platform on your boat because Roland Martin built a platform on your boat and on his boat to I think it was the St. Johns River in Florida to bed fish on it. It was like this whole elaborate deal that he built to get up higher up on it, and that's why you can't like you can't even have like a couple years ago. Gerald Swindle did this whole deal with the little thing that the companies work with. They put this little plate that went on his trolling motor deal, and you couldn't even use that to do it because that goes back to that whole deal that he did on there. So yeah, a lot of cool, fun stories that when you look back through the history of bass fishing, which culminates to
I think every year there's something new.
There's
history happens.
There is, and if you don't like, it's cool to go back and know those old stories, right? You know those old stories like the Jim Bitter story, like Hank Parker's second classic win. like that is why you don't measure fish on the deck of your boat, right?
Right.
It calls Jim Bitter the Bassmaster Classic. And I have to believe that if you watch the finals of the Classic, I can't think of his name, that was leading right up until the last person that weighed in, who led on day 1 and 2. I'm having a brain cramp right now. Young kid, won Angler of the Year last year.
Was it Trey McKinney? Trey
McKinney, right? So understanding, if you ever heard Hank Parker talk about like he gets to the Classic, that happens. He knows how close it's going to be going into the scales, and Ray Scott tells him, "Hey, you're going to. We want you when he comes over the boat and he goes, "Hey, I want you to pull the fish up and show the crowd." And Hank's like, "No, I'm not going to do it," because he's like, he knows how close it is, and he doesn't want any of the water
to get off the fish.
Right. He's like, so, I mean, Trey comes in on the final day and he gets to the scales. I think he weighed in a 23-pound bag on the final day of the Bassmaster Classic and takes first place. But when his boat rolls in that Super 6, he opens the live well, he grabs that bag and runs up on stage. He doesn't like show. He
doesn't lollygag or anything.
He doesn't. He tries to get every bit of water that he can, even though they're going to shake that bag when they get over there. Like he tries to get every bit of that deal getting over there. So if you learn, like, there's always stuff new, but you can still see some of the younger kids. They still know some of that history, and I'm pretty sure Trey McKinney's heard that story probably before. If you ever listen to Hank Parker give a seminar, he'll talk about that stuff. And as soon as I saw him do it, I'm thinking he's probably heard Hank Parker talk about that going into the Bassmaster Classic, how he won against Jim Bitter by just very few ounces. And Hank was adamant that he's not gonna show the fish to the crowd.
Oh.
He did. He did not show a fish to the crowd the official weight off those fish. So yeah, some cool stuff that you learn through that Classic and the things that lead up to it and just through the years of the history of it. So it's pretty cool. Cool deal. We saw a lot of people, but now we're in Oklahoma this week. We do a lot of shows, it seems like, in Oklahoma now. It's
only three.
Well, yeah. It seems like a lot.
I know. Well, I mean, we're gone so much, it just seems like it.
Yeah, we need to fish in Oklahoma. I think that's what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It'd be nice to be out there.
It'd be 3 this year. We did 4 last year. Or no, we did 3 last year. Though we're on the schedule for 4 this year.
Yeah, we potentially could still do 4 this year, so we'll see how it works out.
Yes.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure that part out with the 4th one. So it's a lot of we have a big presence here in Oklahoma. A lot of good stuff that we do and deals with that. So it was a cool deal. We had a great time with getting River out there last week at the Bassmaster Classic, didn't we?
Yes. He did really better than I thought he was going to do.
Yeah, it was River's first time going out and kind of, a lot of people don't know when you're training a service dog. So you got to get them out there and socialize them. And then you got to get them in kind of some environments where they kind of get to work from that perspective. And this was really his first and we're doing it really about 6 months old. And it was cool to watch him do that stuff.
Well, yeah, but he watched Archer a lot too, and that's what helped him.
Yeah, and there were times where we'd come back to the booth, or he would come back to the booth and he'd want to play, and Archer would like try to break character, and I'll be like, "No playing right now, no playing right now, boys." And it's funny that like Archer would be like realize really quick that they're not playing, and they would just be like, "Oh, we're gonna do that." So and then River would be like, "Okay, I can't play." But the best part is that we figured out how to entertain them when we're setting up the booth.
Yeah, we hook them together.
So you don't see confusion.
Yeah, it was a little difficult today.
Yeah.
Unloading, bringing stuff out of that trailer. And you got 2 dogs trying to wrap your legs up with a 1 lead rope.
Well, they want to follow you up into the trailer, and then they don't want to move when you got to try to carry stuff out.
We're trying to carry stuff out, and they're right there with us. But that way, he got Archer trying to keep River, train him to stay right there, and so we put them together. And we figured out that was actually a pretty good way to work on him staying there, and he'll just kind of. I have a cool video we'll post to it that they're going at. We taking them outside to go to fish today, and just watching them. Because then they just kind of keep up right there with each other, and they're just kind of going with each other. So it was kind of cool to watch them kind of do that. So it was a cool deal with that, But yeah,
yep, I'm never going to leave home without him again.
He's in fact, this we figured out today. This is the longest trip he's made.
Yes.
So that's a big training event for him, isn't it?
Yeah, he did good in the truck.
Yeah, because he was getting a little car sick, and so
I think that was more my wife's driving. That's the only time he gets car sick.
Oh, Lord. No, Justin, I don't know. You're going to have to save me on that one because I don't want to get in trouble a little bit. Speaking of wives, we got to give a shout out to the wives. This segment of the podcast is brought to you by the wives of ArmyBassAnglers because we opened the boxes today coming back after we unpacked. And Roy, what did you say today?
I said, "Oh my God, look at this." I said, "Who done this?" And the first words out of your mouth was Linda and Jess. It was so awesome the way they packed things. None of my guys can pack anything that good.
He was like so shocked.
It was organized and everything.
Yeah, so all the stuff. We had a great time with those ladies last week, and they helped us out a ton, but they also gave us some ideas and organizations of how to pack things in some boxes and things like that. And Roy was like so like shocked. I was like, yeah, that definitely was not one of. I knew exactly who had done it because I remember when they were working on it. It was pretty cool to see his expression when he was
I just couldn't believe it. I opened that box and started grabbing stuff. I said, "Dang it!" I mean, they put it all together in bags, still on the hooks where nothing fell apart and everything. Usually when I open the box and everything, they throw it in there with the hooks and it's fell off and it's there, and we got to spend an extra hour or so trying to organize stuff, and they saved us a lot of time today.
Yeah, it was. We really were kind of saved by that. We had a lot of monster bass stuff to put up and a lot of
first
contact tungsten, and then we got a lot of tackle boxes coming in from Monster Bass. Here's how you know when you get to your Airbnb. There's an order from Monster Bass sitting on
the front porch.
So as we say, this segment definitely is brought to you by Monster Bass. The best subscription company in the fishing industry out there, but they have some great tackle boxes, the 3700 type series, and we sold out. We sold like 130 of them at the Bassmaster Classic at our booth, and I know they sold a ton of them at their booth.
We both sold out on Saturday.
Well, technically, we didn't sell out. There was a hidden box somewhere that we did not know where it was at. We would have liked to have known where that was back.
But I sold half of them when we were loading.
We sold the box when we were loading, so that's kind of funny, right? So, but yes, those boxes are pretty awesome boxes, and if you hadn't seen them yet, you can go to the Monster Bass site and kind of check them out. We sell them at all our expos. We're going to have them here this week. We'll have them next week at Red Crest. As I did say, I do get to go home after this, but that doesn't mean that I don't have a show next week. So I think I've had a show every week since the middle of February.
January.
Yeah, something like that.
We've been doing it since the middle of January. I
Yeah.
mean, it may not be a show. I mean, it's ATA show, shot
Something,
show,
yeah.
something going on.
The only good thing is I get to go home to see my wife, get to take Archer home, see Mama. He's going to be like super excited. And then I get to go to Red Crest. And why you say, well, you're back on well, it's in Huntsville, Alabama, and that's where Mama's at. So I get to go check on Mom. I've been on the road for quite some time, and so I try to go check on her when I get a chance to get home, and it just works out that Red Crest is part where
then we're going to be back in Oklahoma after that, hog hunting.
And no, man, you had to remind me, didn't you? Sometimes I'm like, man. So this is the part where everybody's like, oh man, it must be so much fun. I don't know. That part about the traveling is tough.
You got the best life. You get to hunt and fish for a living.
Yeah, so we've only fished 3 days in this whole time frame.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if it's 3 days.
Well, it ain't 3 days. Well, one day we went out and did the new upgrades on my Lowrance and
we did.
After Target.
I bet Justin fishes more than we do, and he's on the hunting pro staff.
Hell, Texas has been a little crazy this spring with the 40-mile-an-hour wind gust or heavier. So fishing's been a little in between. I have been on the water maybe 3 times, maybe 4 in the past 2.5 weeks, which is a little unnormal for me with my work schedule. But I got a really good coalition member that lives in Texas, pretty close, and when I get a free time to go fishing with him, we hit the water. He's making YouTube videos, so he tries to do a YouTube video every time we get on the boat.
Yeah, I know that must be nice to get to go fishing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean,
we're gonna do what everybody does to us. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, with him, retired life's nice, but with my schedule, it's usually once a month or once every 3 or 4 months. But here lately, a little out of normal. I've been on the water probably a little bit more than you guys this stuff. So.
Yeah.
I don't know how you have with the wind and the rain.
Well, the wind and the cold weather, because you'll
Yes.
get 3 or 4 days of 80-degree weather, and then a cold front somehow just magically blows in from the north and brings a northeast wind with it, or northwest wind. And those have been the days that the wind's been the heaviest if nobody's been paying attention to the wind. Usually when the wind is blowing out of the northeast or northwest is when we've had our heavier wind gust. Usually, or the west. We had a couple days where it blew straight out of the west, but they were 30 plus miles an hour. But usually if it's out of the south, the wind's 10 to 15.
Yeah, but the funny thing about it, you can actually see that dust coming across.
Yeah, last Monday, before the Classic, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
we had the 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gust. It was pretty much straight out of the west that day, and had a lot of dust from the West Texas side coming in.
Yeah.
And that dust and pollen, it just ate everybody up.
Remind me of being in like Afghanistan or Iraq when we see it.
And it was an abnormally warm day too, with sand blowing in your face. Kind of felt like stepping off the plane in Saudi Arabia.
Well, you get that orange tint with that sun coming through that dust where it's
Yeah.
like magnifying the particles, and you're like, I've seen this before somewhere, and you're like,
You just see it creeping and coming.
you're like, oh man, this brings back horrible memories. I'm like,
Yeah, they pull that door back on that airplane, and you start filtering out, and you see all them tents, and all you see is nothing but sand.
yeah, I don't know. I think Saudi Arabia is the one place I haven't been. I've been to Kuwait. I've been to Iraq. I don't think I've ever been to Saudi Arabia because we didn't fly through Saudi Arabia or anything. So,
Well, let's see, in 2010, it might have been Kuwait we landed in,
Yeah, I don't
where
remember.
Tent City is.
yeah, that
Is it Kuwait? Where we acclimate?
there's a bunch of different places that
Yeah.
they do it at, but I just never have personally been through there, so I don't know. I mean, we were had talking about. I mean, this is it's crazy in your military career where you go through different places. And we talk a lot about fishing and hunt, but we were today. It was last night we were at dinner.
Last night.
Yeah, we were talking about like, man, Roy's been his career, man, and even up guys. I was in the at 82nd with. They talk about being in Korea because that used to be like the place you were always with, and you know,
feel like being illiterate. You walk out there, you can't read nothing, you can't understand nobody, and it takes you a while to learn it. But after all that, I mean, it's a good place to be.
Yeah,
you learn a lot.
And I don't. It's we were talking about this too. Like, you realize that it's still a pretty dangerous place over there when you're up north.
Yes.
And you see all the mines and everything, where everything's
every bridge, every tunnel.
Yeah. It's all rigged. I mean, if the listeners don't know that, so like a little bit of history lesson, like from the, ever since the Korean War is not over, it's just a ceasefire.
Right.
And because of that, I didn't know this for a long time, but till I was one of my military schools and we were doing some wargaming stuff, and they talk about this, but all that stuff in case something happens, that's all rigged to blow to cut off, to make sure that the North Korea can't come down to way down south, and to hold the Korean Peninsula. And you realize, like, anytime you deploy somewhere like that, that you're still put in harm's way. And it's just a neat talking to him last night that
not only that, they still actually got the minefields out there.
Yeah, that's something you don't hear all the time, right? When you think about it, I mean, America's probably like, people in America be like, minefield, what's it? They've never even heard or seen that. And like, man, that's just a crazy thought to most people.
Yeah, because you'd be walking out, you'd be in field training and everything. You could walk right up on one of them and not know it.
Did you ever walk out into the Red Rocks, Justin, deployed?
No.
Oh, that's scary. I'm just going to tell you. You know what I'm talking about? so that's the old, it's really more prevalent in Afghanistan, but where the old Russian minefields were and stuff like that. And they basically, you look down and you realize you're in a minefield because the locals are painted like red rocks.
Yeah, I know. I remember going through, let's see, NTC and JRTC, and that was in some of our training classes. And then I know when I was in boot camp as an engineer, when we did our sand tables and stuff and looking for mines, that was another thing there. They were showing us like, hey, these are, when we're looking for IEDs, because believe it or not, engineers actually kind of got away from construction engineering about the time I joined and went into strictly route clearance type missions. So we get a little bit more training with the EOD and explosives and stuff like that. So,
Bangalore torpedoes. Remember
love the Bangalores.
Yeah.
Thought I was a Saving Private Ryan again, storming the beaches of Normandy within things.
I got a good video, not with torpedo or with Bangalore torpedoes, but the demo and stuff. I had to show you guys sometime from Afghanistan.
I think my most favorite charge is probably the shape charge, though.
Yeah, it's a good stuff. But yeah, man, we'd be on. You realize, like, you look down, you see red rocks, and you're like, halt, nobody move. I need everybody to retrace their tracks exactly where you stepped. Like, everybody back up. And you're like, I think that my pucker factor was worse than it was riding down the road. I'm just going to tell you when you realize where you're at,
I mean, that's just kind of going off of what Shawn talks about. When I was in Kirkuk in Iraq, which is in northern Iraq, if nobody doesn't know the map there, Kirkuk was actually an air base by the Air Force.
Yeah.
They're in the teardown of Balad and Spiker and Balad for Spiker and all that. We still had to clear main supply routes up to that airfield for the Air Force so the 88 mics could truck everything up. And I actually got to go up in the air in a little 2-man airplane, little Cessna.
Yeah.
Had infrared and all that. And we flew ahead of the convoy, 3 or 4 miles ahead of the convoy. And we were actually, what we were looking for were hot spots in the roadway. And every night we come across the same spots that we blew up the night before.
Maybe more in it.
Yeah. And usually 100 or 200 yards away from an Iraqi checkpoint, there would be a new ID.
Imagine that.
Right?
I wonder how that happened.
That was probably one of the funnest 3 or 4 hours up in the sky, not being down there in those trucks on that roadway. But then you have your bad times too. So
yeah, it was so like, this would be a lot. We get to go a lot of places. We've been a lot, but it's just nifty to talk to different perspectives. Having never been to Korean Peninsula, it was kind of cool to talk to Roy last night and kind of be like, you'd always hear the stories of people and the guys like that. And I'm not going to tell you why we got started talking about that. It had to do around food, but yeah,
rice.
Yeah, that was what it was. It was rice. Mm-hmm. Roy's not a particular fan of rice. That's how we got on.
Well, it took me years and years to even think about eating it again.
Yeah, because his time in Korea, but yeah, it was.
Just put a Mexican food plate in front of his face.
Well, it's a different kind of rice too. There, he'll tell you it's a different. That's a different kind of rice. You have to ask him when we were on the podcast what that's why.
And they said they don't export it. I said, I know better than that.
So yeah, we that whole perspective. But I mean, it was just a whole discussion because it was rice because I got to talk about Afghanistan. Like we used to get rice over there, and I'd go to the villages and stuff, and they would fix food and stuff, and I would eat. And it's a very different type of rice.
It was talking about Mama Son having more info than we did.
I know. That was the discussion. It was like, hey, so explain a little bit what we mean. It got started too. We got to talking too about like what everybody here would know and the listeners would know as a food truck, right?
Yeah, gut truck.
Well, we call it a gut truck, but they call it a food truck. Like all these fancy food trucks that everybody has now. Growing up in the military, you'd be at a range or, out training somewhere, and this magical truck would show up out of nowhere to sell you stuff in the middle of a base, right? I mean, so it was labeled the gut truck, and so in Korea, how did it work in Korea?
Well, Mama Son always had her tent set up with ramen and and bulgogi and all that stuff and everything. And when we got there, and the weirdest thing was when we broke down, we had to move. She was always there before we were set up waiting for us there. She had more intel than any of us did.
Yeah, that's the funny part. I'm like, okay, how did she know? And that's probably how First Sergeant always knew what happened downtown too.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I've never experienced that part of it. We've always had peace of being when I was in Afghanistan, we'd ate with the locals and everything like that. But it's kind of funny. We got talking about that last night, and I'd always heard stories about it, about Mama San and the whole thing, and how she would move the little tent and the thing around, and how it was like the gut truck and everything like that. And I'm like, I bet that was a funny sight and everything like that for it.
Well, I mean, I had a Katusa for a driver because I was a platoon sergeant over there. And what Katusa is a Korean soldier gets to train with the American soldiers.
Right.
And so he was my driver, and we went around and stuff, and we stopped in this little hole in the wall. I don't know, I call it a restaurant, I guess. And you walk in there, and there's a fish tank there.
Yeah.
And he says, pick out what you want. And so I picked out the fish I wanted. Next thing I know, the thing was on my plate raw. But I mean, it was good.
Yeah. You didn't know that was what you were getting into, did you?
No.
And here's the whole thing too. When you go to a place like that and you sit down to eat and you've been like invited in there, you can't turn it down.
No, you can't.
I mean, it's just one of those things where like you have to.
You insult them.
Yeah. So, and here's the other thing too. I don't know about Korea or whatever, but there's like, I know this was this way in Afghanistan. Don't eat everything on your plate. Because the minute you eat everything on your plate,
they'll fill it back up.
It's not like here in America. If you eat everything on your plate, it's a symbol that it was good. No, they will bring you more, and you'll have to eat more. So Yeah, you learn like really, really quick. Don't eat everything on your plate because you'll be eating a lot more if you do that. You want to leave some on there, you know. So yeah, you never got to experience that, have you? Just
No, when I was over there, we didn't go too much into the villages. Now, one of our platoons, they were separated from our actual operating area where we were at. They had their own little a cob about 10, 12 miles outside of Kirkuk, and they were actually training some of the Iraqi army up there on that. So they got to do a little bit more wandering out in the smaller villages north of Kirkuk Air Base up there.
yeah. So that's just one of those cool stories about being in the military. I think that's just when we traveled around, and sometimes when we're on these trips, it kind of makes us think nostalgically back to like when we were out there and like how some of that stuff comes up.
It does. I mean, even some of the people come over and talk to us at the booth, and
we're like, some things we hadn't thought about. It's just like funny today. I thought hilarious like that. We said something about dinner or something. Something came up about a Chinese buffet, and I realized like I haven't eaten in a Chinese buffet since I retired. I was
talking about getting mud bugs. Couldn't find one place. And I said, we can go to a Chinese buffet and they'll have them there, but they're not very good.
Yeah. And as the story came up about like, I guess I hadn't been to a Chinese buffet since I left the military base. So like, that's just like a staple of like,
Yeah, just drive outside the main gate and there'll be about 4 of them.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I was proud of Shawn tonight. He took us out and had steak and rib.
We just won't tell you where we ate.
Hey, first of all, I did not pick this place to go eat at. This was not my choice. I just went along for the ride, of course. I'm going to just tell you this. It was not my choice of places. I will say that.
But we had about three plates each, probably.
Yeah. It was there was
all kind of desserts.
There was a buffet involved in it. Okay.
It's like going to Walmart.
Yeah, my wife would not be going to that place. I can tell you. So she's gonna kill me for telling people this on the podcast.
If you don't, I will.
So here's why she is not a buffet person, because she's like, she can't stand for her food to be touching. So if she goes to a buffet, there's like really no way for it not to be touching. So like it like truthfully, like Thanksgiving, like freaks her out. Like she can't like stand for like her food to be touching. So it's a funny thing. So yeah,
that's something I know quite a few people has been that way and stuff. They don't want their food touching everything, but when it goes in their stomach and you're digesting, it's all together.
I know, but it's like, she like,
or she don't know what goes on in the kitchen in the back of the restaurants either.
I guess, but like she's like, it's got to be like little bit like if you ever look at her plate, it's got to be like sectioned off. She really needs one of those like kids plates or lunchroom plates with the squares.
Cafeteria plates.
Yeah, that's what she really needs. Like even when we're at the house, I'm like,
I'm gonna find her one and give it to her for Christmas.
Yeah, it's got to be like sectioned off. I get to laughing sometimes. I'm like, seriously? She's like, I can't stand for my food to be touching. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm like, I don't care,
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's because, when we've been places like especially after you've been through Army training, you just get whatever they give you,
Yep. Just slap it on there and you go on.
And you spoon it in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's like always like we talk about the number of people that we find that like the first time they ever ate grits was in the military, I think, Roy, you never ate grits till you were in the military, did you?
No. And they tasted like sand.
Yeah. Grits wasn't my favorite thing growing up, but
I never could
military
figure
was
out
the
why
first time
anybody
I
liked
tasted
them.
it because my grandmother loved to cook grits
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not like,
and extra butter.
yeah, they definitely Army grits are not like getting like shrimp and grits from New Orleans. I can tell you that. I mean, I love some shrimp and grits from New Orleans, but it's definitely not,
Oh, no.
not Army grits, that's for sure.
And they mix them with their scrambled eggs. They just, woof. And I love eggs.
Now, see, that's a funny story about my wife. She can't stand for her food to be touching, but she loves some shrimp and grits now. I'm just telling you, that one I don't understand.
She eat soup? Stew?
Yeah. I don't know.
No sense.
I don't know. You can learn all things about on the podcast that we just questions that we want to know. like the things that we ponder. Sometimes I like to ask human interest questions. Roy and I'll be like, we'll be riding down the road and they'll be like, I just want to know these things from people when like they do things, or what was the thought process in your mind when you did that? Not with, how did you, what part of you thought that was a good idea,
I do a lot of that.
I'm like, seriously, what part of that did you think was a good idea,
It was a good idea at the time.
Yeah. So I'm like, so that's why I like to do these things. I mean, Justin, you probably get a lot of that being what you do for a living.
Yeah. I question myself on calls every day. Like, is this physically possible? There's things you can't make it can't make up to make the story track, because it actually was true.
Yeah.
But I scratch my head on a lot of times I go to a call and like, what in the actual is going on here? And then I got to sit there and decipher things and to figure it all out. Just like, you get pulled over twice within 40 miles.
Yeah. I wasn't going to say anything about that.
On his way up here
Yeah.
in Tulsa,
That was
on
like,
the turnpike.
what am I thinking?
Yeah, what were you thinking? Well, it's bad when the state trooper goes, didn't you just get pulled over a while back by my buddy back there?
40 miles back, didn't you get pulled over?
Yeah. And see, it's a little bit different, I guess, here in Oklahoma versus Texas, because, in Texas, yes, it's a construction zone. You have to slow down. However, if there's no workers present, then if TxDOT, they're required by TxDOT, the workers or contractors out there working on that roadway are required to cover up the sign when they leave.
Right.
But they don't have to time.
But they don't. They leave them there. They're supposed to lay them down if they don't cover them up, but they don't. So you don't actually have to slow down if workers are not present. And I'm just bebopping along on the turnpike. It's 75 mile an hour, and I got my cruise set for 80, and I'm just rolling, and I hit a construction zone at speed limit 60.
By the way, this is at night. There's nobody there, by the way.
Yeah, it was in the evening time. So, I mean, they've already gone home for the day. And I just happened to come over the hill and I see these headlights just sitting there. And I'm like, well, that's probably a trooper, but he's got radar. You can't outrun, you can't. So I'm like, and then I see the red and blues come on. He pulled over. And a funny story was, he gets out and he's like, what year's your truck? Your license and insurance. And he comes back. He goes, just slow it down. Have a good night. Here's your warning. And 40 miles later, I get outside of McAllister, just 40 miles, and I see the red and blues again. And he comes up and he goes, didn't you just get pulled over by my trooper friend about 40 miles back? I was like, yeah.
Yeah, see. Yeah, there you go.
Let's see how them cops are.
Yeah.
But, they were really nice Oklahoma Highway patrolmen. They were super polite, very professional, and let me each with a warning. So,
especially when you tried to tell them that their law was messed up, that they didn't have the correct law.
Yeah, that trooper just laughed at me. And he goes, and then as he comes back, he goes, so you have a firearm as a gas underneath the seat here, and he's like, I figured. And so either, I didn't, and I'm a law enforcement officer. So
now you want to tell everybody that
so I didn't want to tell him that because, if he got me for speeding, he got me for speeding. It is what it is. I don't try to get out of things. So, I didn't mention it. He goes, well, and I got to wondering, and he finally, I didn't have to ask him. He says, well, you got an LTC. And I was like, well, that's true. I do have an LTC. So now you got
to tell them what an LPC is.
What does it stand for?
License to carry.
Yeah, firearm. Yeah, remember, everybody doesn't know what that is.
Well, see, in Texas, you don't have to have it now because it's constitutional carry.
There's a lot of states you don't have to carry, but when you go across state lines.
But you can, and federal law also states that for law enforcement officers that you can still carry an off duty and be fine. But yeah, he's like, yeah, no, I figured you did. He goes, you got a Texas tag, so we all know about you Texans. So I thought that was pretty funny too.
Hey, that's the true story. Like, so they had that incident and that cheer competition in Dallas, and I think we were here in Oklahoma. That was it. I don't remember where. Maybe
we're in OKC when that happened.
Yeah, we were in OKC, and it was a big cheer competition. If you guys don't know, big part of when I'm on the road, my wife's off at cheer competitions and with her daughter and whatever, and a big part of my wife is a phenomenal cheerleader. Won a national championship in Kentucky, so we're just conversations are always talking
Oh,
about.
now you're trying to smooth it over with the food. National
Nah.
competition, national champion.
I
I know she is.
She is. She's got 3 national championship
Mm.
rings, 2 from high school and 1 from college. But anyway, so anyways, the choreographer of the routine where Macy cheers at the cheer gym, they weren't at that competition, but anyways, he was at that deal in Dallas, and someone said something about, because when it first came out, they said, oh, it was a active shooter situation. He goes, come on, it's Texas. If it had been active shooter situation, they'd have been dead in like 2 seconds because everybody carries a gun in Texas. And I'm like, well, that's a pretty true statement in that whole type deal. So I mean, that really is type thing. I mean, everybody kind of knows that. That's it's just funny how people think about it.
Just to clarify, it actually wasn't a active shooter situation at all. It was a disturbance between
2 dads.
that got into an actual a fight that knocked over a metal pole, and some innocent bystander thought it was gunshots and started screaming, which caused a mass panic and a mass evacuation. There were several injuries unrelated to the physical assaults between the two dads. Some, most of them were trampled over, but
hey, maybe we should take that individual to the range and let him know what actual gunshots sound
Yes.
like.
yeah, and going back to gunshots, people call in all the time for work related stuff that I hear gunshots and just firecrackers.
Yeah, and like it'd be like I'll be at home and they'd be like, "That's a gunshot." I'm like, "No, that's not a gunshot." She's like, "How do you know?" I'm like, "Trust me, you know the difference."
Mm-hmm.
You're like
Even where you live, what difference does it make?
right? Well, I just like, or we didn't have to be where we live. We're just out doing whatever. I'm like, "That's not a gunshot." She's like, "How do you know?" I'm like, "Trust me, It's like that scene from Black Hawk Down. He's like, you'll know when they're shooting us.
Actually starts.
There'll be no doubt in your mind. Like there's a difference between, like when you've been there, done that, and you know what the sound of gunfire sounds like, and it's not the same. So it's just funny when people are like a metal pole falling still with a gunshot. I'm like, come on now. Now, I mean, we all probably would have jumped if we'd all been there.
We would have flinched and everything.
But we'd have known like right away, oh, wait, that's not a gunshot. That's just part of it. But yeah, that's kind of funny that did. Yeah, a lot of good stuff.
Yep, it's going to be an awesome weekend.
It is.
Yeah, they not only got, our backwoods hunting show going on, they also have, next door, they have a Jurassic World or whatever for 3 days going on. So be a lot of foot traffic coming through, I think.
I think you should try to get on the bull over there, Justin, the mechanical bull.
I don't think my body would.
I think we can put it on Facebook Live if you do it.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, come on.
No.
I get a lot of views for that. Come on now.
No. I think we should put Senior up on it.
It wouldn't be.
No, I got a belt buckle. I done that.
There, you put it on there. So it's a good deal. We have a lot of fun doing these on the roads, and it's a great time. We love sharing the things we do with you guys, and just dropping knowledge. Glad I could educate my 2 individuals on some Bassmaster Classic history tonight. Let them talk a little bit about the history of the Classic, fishing history. I think we should
just everything in general.
Yeah, everything.
It was a good talk.
It is a good talk. We love these podcasts. I like our last podcast we did. That was a great one. If you hadn't heard the Granny one,
you gotta listen. You gotta
go back and listen to Granny's story. And
gotta listen to the last one with Granny.
Yeah, with Granny.
I heard it the first time yesterday, I think, or no, the day before. I listened to it.
Again, if you listen to it, go to our Facebook page on there, and you get to see the pictures of Granny and her catfish.
Yeah, it's a great story. It was just great. We love when we have that many people in it. We just have a lot of people. It almost kind of makes us kind of feel like we're cheating because we don't have a lot of people like sitting around talking.
Yeah, and to our military veterans out there, if you're listening to the podcast, check us out at forceonforcetv.com and fill out an application and then join the ranks.
Hey, with that, one final quote as we close. Starting the 1st of April, we'll have Force on Force Army Bass Anglers Force on Force on the Sportsman Channel and the World Fishing Network. It'll be airing season 14. Coming to you from Camp Mack, Lake Kissimmee, Florida. It's going to be a great season. You're going to want to watch it. There's a lot of fish that are caught in this season. A lot of great storylines. You're going to see some cool people. You're going to hear and see people you've heard on the podcast. As part of
a lot
that.
of smack talking.
A lot of smack talking is going to be part of that. So check it out, and we'll see you next time.
Oh.
Thanks for listening to the Force on Force podcast. Join us next time as we dive into more topics from the Force on Force talk. For more information or to learn how to join the organization, visit our website at forceonforcetv.com.